So good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Thank God, fine.
Yeah, I'm pleased to see you, really.
You as well.
And well, unfortunately, not the other day, but in DC, at the Jewish Museum, like two young couple, one young couple was killed.
Yes,
Aaron,
horribly, horribly.
Aaron, yeah, Aaron Liszczynski and his fiance.
Hmm.
It was truly shocking, and at the same time, this was something that I had been, calling out as like something that we have to be careful, really, because there was actually a terror attempt in Japan to attack, somebody, like in Osaka Prefecture was planning a terror attack, and the police
Hmm.
arrested them right away. So I think that the Japanese, police is very cautious because of, the past history of the, the terror attack that happened in 1972, and also,
Hmm.
it was not intentional that, the Japanese prosecution, missed this Army, the head of the Red Army to be released after 22 years. I mean, and now when do the internet search, for example, like um, Nakba or Palestine, and then this, the terrorist, name comes up, and then, she writes the articles for, about the Palestinians, but, it's not even for the Palestinians, I think, in my opinion.
I agree with you. In fact, they're doing a whole analysis now. They haven't come to a complete conclusion
Hmm.
about the origins of the assassin. And they're finding a red communist, red China actually, connection to the organization that he was associated with.
Oh my
And it's
goodness,
not
really?
unusual. It's not unusual because there is a alliance
Hmm.
among a lot of the terrorists, and it begins because once upon a time the KGB used to fund and train all these terrorist organizations, and so the IRA gunmen were trained in the Palestinian
Hmm.
terrorist camps that were paid for by the time by the KGB. And now, unfortunately, Communist China, the party,
Hmm.
has taken on this role. And so we've got to be vigilant because there is a connection. And it's a connection of, in this case, usually the very extreme far left
Hmm.
that are nihilist and they want to destroy everything. And so this is their target today, but it could be anyone because they want to undermine society as we know it.
Wow. So, like, communist China uh has some connections with the shooter.
The, with the organization
With the
that the shooter was associated with.
Oh my goodness.
And it's pretty clear factually that he had targets because he had a lot of bullets and he could have been shooting up everybody. Why, in particular, this young couple? And why
Really?
put 21 bullets into them?
Yeah. I I s- I it was cruel, really,
Yeah, in fact, Sarah, the young lady,
Hmm.
had survived the initial shooting and she was crawling away, and
Hmm.
he kept shooting her in the back until she was dead. Now, this is not the usual tactic
Mm,
of a terrorist protester, as it were, who tries to harm as many people as possible in order to cause a mass event. This was very targeted, and so it's pretty shocking, and that's why they're investigating it further, because it's not consistent with the ordinary profile
yeah.
of a psycho, in essence. This was too targeted. This was an assassination.
It's it's strange, and at the same time, I did not exactly know, in particular that, communist China was involved. However, like, this Harvard case.
Hmm.
There has been, the Japanese journalists are complaining that, the Japanese students, like somebody is associated with, communist China, and, that's why we're getting rid of. But, we have to be very cautious of who we support.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yes.
it's a very scary time right now to me.
Hmm.
So, and you know, I, I was on the other day was um, yeah, like I have been thinking a lot about the propaganda at the same time, you know,
Hmm.
and Iran, creates a lot of propaganda, and Khamenei, makes a lot of, posts, as on, X, for example. But it's not Iran's original tactics to be at home. Obviously, some communist ideology that, is affecting Iran. And, you know,
Unfortunately, we
mhm,
have a new nexus of evil, as it were.
yes.
It's the Iranian regime.
Hmm.
The average Iranian is a good person. In fact, the
Yes.
average Iranian, I think, today would love to get rid of these terrorists
Yes.
and
I agree.
restore a rational government that would be at peace with everybody.
Hmm.
Uh, but these psychos basically rule, and they put everyone in danger. And their goal is to undermine Western civilization
Hmm.
because they're nihilists. They want to destroy everything.
Hmm.
And in their belief system, they think they might come up on top. And so first you destroy because they don't have a real plan.
Hmm.
And they're allied today with China, which needs them. It's amazing how God created the world and with a sense of humor
Yeah.
that one of the largest populations in the world,
Mhm.
China, has no oil.
Yeah,
And so,
exactly. That's what I have been thinking as well. You know,
so they have to trade. Now, uh, that's the nexus with Iran, and they have been hard at work undermining
hmm.
all of the sanctions that have been placed against Iran. Although in recent times, because the Trump administration has redoubled its efforts, it's getting restricted as well.
Hmm.
And so Iran today is not in good financial shape.
Yeah,
Uh,
really, I hope so. And at the same time, Japan has to be very careful of this CCP's, propaganda, you
Oh,
know.
yes. Oh, yes, because Japan is clearly a
A
target.
target, yeah.
Yes.
I was
And
surprised that they want to target Palestinians too.
mhm.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's that nexus. It's
Yeah.
the nexus of the extreme left, the terrorists,
Mm,
and they view their goal,
mm,
which is a very short-term goal, it's to destroy everything.
mm,
Because then they would immediately fight with each other. You notice whenever they seem to be getting some progress, they immediately begin fighting with each other
Hmm.
because they don't have a plan for what happens next. They have only a plan about destroying. And
Hmm.
then, of course, they would fight with each other because the last thing they want is the other guy to be in charge.
Yeah, but it was good that you explained to me why, this communist China's, is connected to the organization this guy is, this shooter was involved. Be I mean, now, uh, it's this, I guess that, you know, a lot of organizations, I have to say, turned out that, they have connections with, like Student Justice for Palestine, for example, like all those organizations are connected to the terrorism.
Yes, in
And,
fact, it's fascinating what they've done.
mm,
After the Holy Land Foundation trial,
mm,
where a lot of the connections, because they followed the money, came out,
yes.
uh, and they were all at risk because they had been highly organized
Mm-hmm.
legally as well.
Yeah.
So you just had to follow the organizational charts.
Yes.
Now they've adopted a strategy of being decentralized
Mm-hmm.
so that you can't easily put them all together. Of
Mm,
course, when you follow the money, it's
mm-hmm.
amazing how the money comes from the same sources,
Yes.
whether it be Iran, Qatar, Communist China, uh, because those are the central organizations promoting this wrongdoing throughout the world for their own purposes. So they strive for chaos because in their mind, chaos gives them opportunity. We strive for
Mm,
peace and prosperity
yes.
because that's what we're all about. And that's not their goal. Their goal is power in the end.
Exactly. Yes, that's, what exactly is. And Japan, for example, um, the media is divided, and at the same time, they criticize Trump, for example, or I don't exactly understand the I have to say, intentions. Well, they do not seem to have intentions, and there is no whole point of getting closer to CCP China, like Japan already has spies for sure. And also, I mean, and this administration is allowing, for example, like 10-year visa for the, financially rich, like classes. But, it's scary because those, spies could be, provided with financial sources and also the fake background, and they
Hmm.
could get into Japan very easily with that visa. So,
Hmm.
I mean, people might think, I'm not saying average Chinese people are bad people because, my grandparents used to live in, Manchuria, and also, they appreciated, Chinese people, before Mao's, cultural revolution. And so, I'm not talking about, Chinese people, but this political organization, entity that exists in China, and especially under Xi Jinping for some reason, it has strengthened. And, it became a very strong organization, which is very scary to me. And so,
So, so think about there's a common theme here. China was originally 20 something nations.
yeah, yes.
Uh, they weren't so much at peace
Hmm.
necessarily,
Yeah.
uh, but they had the same building blocks of
Mhm.
family allegiances,
mm,
They viewed success
mm,
certainly very locally
mm,
as opposed to a national consciousness. And the communists,
mm,
based on classical Marxist
mm.
philosophy, you notice it's very interesting. They always talk about one world, one power, uh,
Yes.
as opposed to family first. Let's all, I call it enlightened self-interest,
Mm,
because two people appreciate they could do better together than apart. Well, that's what makes the world go round.
mm,
And the basis of the Abraham Accords, for example.
mm.
But the communist system has been to control, control, control.
Yes.
And so they stamp out anything that supports family or any kind of identity separate and apart from the party. So, for example, the Uyghurs, Christians,
Oh, yes, exactly.
it's awful.
Yes.
And if you look at the PA, for example, remember that Abbas went to the University of Moscow.
Hmm.
He was trained by the KGB. He admits it.
Yeah.
And so, what did his predecessor, Yasser Arafat, who was a KGB agent as well, do? They stamped out what were called the Hamulas. The Hamula is the clans. So, in the area where Arabs lived in Judea and Samaria
Yes.
and in Gaza, they had clans,
Hmm.
and each clan decided its own fate. It was basically an extended family group.
Mm,
But Arafat came in and he had to, like the Chinese communists, like the Soviets in Russia,
mm.
stamp out any individual identity. They were against this family concept of the clans. And
Oh.
And so they created this tyrannical
Mm,
central government that, as is normally the case, then they become also the lords and masters, and they take all the money and
mm,
take away individual achievement and opportunity,
mm.
which is fascinating. The people who work in Israel are doing rather well. The people
Yes.
there are not, because they're not given opportunities. Women, they're
Mm.
not just second class citizens, they're slaves,
Yeah,
basically.
that's what I'm thinking. Yes.
Hmm.
And see, the Japanese media, for example, I'm sorry that I keep on going because I want to go to Jerusalem Day and, just go to your book. But, before that, the Japanese media started to say, like, for example, there were like bodies, tied behind, they're with their hands tied behind, executed, and some of their bodies are not even, like they I have to say in the form of like they decomposed already so much that it's
Hmm.
impossible to identify people. And then they say that like IDF did it. But like when I heard it, it's the execution style of Hamas.
Right.
And I do not understand why the Japanese media are allowing, all these, Hamas, activities to be, you know, just going without criticism. And they read out Gaza Health Ministry, which, and they
Yes.
read out Al Jazeera, like, oh my goodness. But, I think that, yeah, like, I guess that, I think that the Japanese media really, needs to understand what they're doing right now. Especially, they were just a few days ago talking about this Harvard case and communism, like, why, CCP it matters, in Harvard. but it's a big thing, really.
Hmm. Yes, especially since they use that
Mm.
as a platform
Hmm.
uh, to steal our intellectual property,
Exactly. Yes, yes, right.
and so many of them are in the employ of the Chinese Communist Party, and they're there for a reason. They're there to steal as much as they can.
Yeah.
And if we wonder how did they get access to this, get access to that, well, they've got a network,
Mm.
and this is a rather inexpensive network compared to some of the other efforts they have,
Mm.
because these are students, they're research assistants, they're in the lab. It's very scary, and it goes to the concept of having better vetting
Hmm.
and also a re-examination of what we're doing because this is one of our real natural resources.
Yeah.
The the fact that we have these educational institutions and we have these brilliant people, that's human capital of a sort that's irreplaceable,
Hmm.
and we're putting it at risk.
Yeah. Actually, Japan has exactly the same problem
Hmm.
with the universities and institutions. But I guess that I would like to move my topic to the Jerusalem Day today
Hmm.
because it's very special to me. And, I really hoped that, you would make it. Like, because, you worked very hard, you know, and, you wrote a book because it's just right, available on Amazon. It's a wonderful book that, I believe everybody should be reading. Yeah,
Thank you.
I really appreciate that you gave me the copy. So, but what you write, is always full of knowledge. And I'm at awe, like all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. I really cannot believe how much, I am able to enjoy by reading, and learn at the same time, you know. So, but, how do you think, what do you think of the Jerusalem Day this year?
Well, it's always a wonderful, wonderful day
Mm-hmm.
because there's something special about Jerusalem. We were there for a few weeks this year for the Passover holidays and for 2 weeks afterwards. We
Oh.
met people from all over the world.
Mm.
There's, I feel so at peace there. There's something in the air, I got to tell you. I mean, when you think of our work days and how pressured they are,
Yeah.
there I feel calm.
Mm-hmm.
So I've often said there's something in the air. Now
Mm.
it's interesting. I just found something in Psalms. We say that rebuild Jerusalem is something that ties us all together.
Mm.
And the Jerusalem Talmud says on that particular verse, that's correct. When people come together
Mm.
in Jerusalem, they're like friends. And it's a beautiful statement because that's what happens. You meet people from all over the world, from all walks of life. Religion doesn't matter. All the political nonsense
Mm.
doesn't matter. What matters is you're there together
Mm-hmm.
and you're walking around and enjoying truly the city of Jerusalem. And it's that special. And it does bring together all the religions, all the people of the world. And I think that's the way God intended it. And there's some special quality, therefore, being there.
Oh, well, see, Abraham Accords, that was something that was initiated by, uh, the first term Trump administration.
Hmm.
And I think that, you know, the Japanese people, because there are a lot of downloads from Japan, and I hope that, you could explain. I think that, this Jerusalem Day and Abraham Accords, have something in common, I mean,
They
not
do.
common, but
No, they do. You know who told me
right?
that? David Friedman, the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Israel. He
Yes.
said to me, people often focus on the verses in Isaiah
Mhm.
that they'll beat their swords into plowshares. He goes, but you got to go a few verses before that to the beginning of the chapter, because what it says is peace will emanate from Jerusalem.
Mm,
And he goes, it was the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel
mhm,
and the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem, which sparked the Abraham Accords.
mhm,
Now, I can give you some political reasons because it demonstrated tangibly
mhm,
that being a friend and an ally of the US matters.
mhm,
And it's something that you can rely on.
mhm,
And so people said to themselves in various countries who'd been, look, I represented Arab clients for many years from the Emirates, from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt,
mhm,
and there was business going on,
mhm,
but it was always under the table in a sense. It wasn't out in the open.
mhm,
And this enabled people to bring it out into the open and celebrate it. And the result was there was more of it, and the more of this enlightened self-interest, of this uh, prosperity that was generated through these business ties, the
yeah.
more solid the relationships.
Mhm,
And so it engendered all of that because everyone recognized, hey, these are two good friends and allies to have, and we should be getting closer together. And the result was mutual benefit. And that's what truly
mhm,
moves the world and establishes sustainable, peaceful relations. And so the Abraham Accords, as David Friedman said so well, were the peace that emanated from Jerusalem.
oh, wow.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. And at the same time, if people read your book, uh there is a process of how Jerusalem became the capital. And I believe Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel. And
Hmm.
it's not, it does not mean that Israel occupies the territory. Like Francesca Albanese's, like to say like Israel occupies Israel like whoa whoa whoa, all these things in the UN. But uh you know in the end, I believe that if Jerusalem becomes the capital of Israel, everything will be at peace, you know,
I agree
regardless.
with you, and I think it's a recognition when you really think about it.
Hmm.
It is basically unchallengeable
Hmm.
that Jewish people have been there for more than 3,000 years. There's no evidence of anybody else. In fact, when I was getting the book peer reviewed, I sent it around to academics, and every so often somebody would call or email
Hmm.
and say to me, what's your best evidence?
Hmm.
Because they quibble about, well, does this actually say that? And I said, well, that's not what I said. What
hmm
I said, it's a corroborating account like the Cyrus cylinders.
hmm
And uh, but you have the Mesher steel, you have all kinds of other evidence that goes back really far. We're talking about ninth century and 8th century BCE. So you have tangible archaeological and documentary evidence of Jews being there. So,
I hear
uh,
that like there
but
was burials, right? There were burials that,
well, that's what I argued. I said, so I said to them, I said, we can all agree on one thing. I mean, unless you're a Viking and you burn the body, uh, when people live in a place, they die. And when they die, they're buried.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
so what's the oldest cemetery in Israel?
Mm,
I said the Mount of Olives. In fact, it's one of the oldest cemeteries in the world.
mm,
It's certainly more than 3,000 years old.
wow.
So I said, is there another cemetery that's of that age? I said, it seems to me, as far as I know, and I'm not talking about individual grave sites, but I'm talking about real cemeteries, the oldest Arab cemeteries from the 11th century.
Mm,
So the guy scratched his head, and then he got back to me a few hours later and says, well, they're doing DNA evidence now. He goes, but there may be a Philistine cemetery. I said, okay, there may be Philistine grave sites, you mean? I
mm.
said, and when you find them, get back to me. He goes, you're right. And that ended that discussion because there were Philistines there. There were all kinds of people who traveled through.
Oh,
The Philistines tried to conquer Israel. I mean, that's pretty clear and failed. And King David was able to push them out.
mm.
So there may be some Philistine grave sites. It's interesting, the Canaanite DNA is mostly in Lebanon. They really don't have much Canaanite DNA in Israel, which
Oh,
makes sense because the Bible describes how Canaan, who was a descendant of Ham, one of
oh,
the three
okay.
children of Noah,
Mm,
they were assigned the approaches to Sodom and Gomorrah, the approaches to Gaza,
mm.
and Sidon and above, which is Lebanon. So
Wow.
Bible's a pretty good title report.
Wow, that's impressive, really. You know,
So Jerusalem is very special, and being there is so exciting. As I said, there's a special quality,
mm,
and it truly is a place that brings everyone together.
yes, exactly.
Now,
Really.
Jerusalem has never, this is a fascinating fact, Jerusalem has never been the capital of another nation, ever in its history. Even when Jordan conquered East Jerusalem, they didn't move their capital from Amman to Jerusalem.
Oh,
In the Ottoman Empire,
hmm.
it was hardly mentioned because in Syria, in Damascus was their regional center. So it's never been the capital of any other nation than the Jewish nation.
You know, like I my one of my favorite authors is Mark Twain. You know, he
Hmm.
visited Israel and he wondered about, why, like Israel, at the time, Israel was not, very much developed and an Israeli said, it's only, the Jews. This is
Hmm.
the land for the Jews. And when the Jews built the land, that's the only time, you know, prosperous. And I
Yeah.
think that Jerusalem is the same, really.
Now I'll give you another interesting fact. The names of the Arabs who
Mhm,
call themselves Palestinians
mhm.
uh, are all the ancestral names are all from other places. So you have
Exactly. Yeah, that's what yeah.
Al-Masri, which is from Egypt, Abbas is
Mhm.
Iranian, all from other places. So there's online a database where you can search names of so-called Palestinians. So you would think now they can't actually pronounce the word Plishtim or Palestinian because they
Oh.
don't pronounce the P. In their expression, it's pho. So you would expect to see if they actually came from this area, much like wherever else they come from, the names would be like Al-Falastin.
Oh, okay.
There is no such name. I
Mm,
couldn't find one,
yeah, that's
but
why.
a lot of different name places.
Yes. See, I mean, the existence of the Jewish people, it's a very funny tale, and I think that you probably know, but the Japanese ancestor used to be the Jews.
I've heard
But
this as
but
well.
it's important that, I think that for the Japanese people to understand that the Jewish people had, existed and does exist right now. And, Israel is for the Jewish people. That part, like the entire thing, not just, Jews, but, Israel is for the Jewish people, at the same.
I think it also speaks to the qualities of the
Yes.
people. The Japanese people are a people,
Yes, exactly. And
and they
we're different
occupy
from
their
China.
ancestral land,
Hmm.
and that's the way it should be. And
Yeah.
because, see, I believe the way God intended the world is basic building blocks.
Hmm.
First, family,
Hmm.
then the greater family.
Hmm.
Okay. And when you identify that way,
Hmm.
you have a engine for success
Hmm.
and an engine for not just success, but recognition
Hmm.
and promoting of the genius
Yes.
of people. Okay, so I don't think God wanted us to be in a world that had one government
Yeah,
and only
this,
one way.
yes.
In fact, it's a celebration of
Hmm.
all these wonderful, diverse qualities we all bring to the table.
Yes.
And so all these world government concepts are
Hmm.
really stamping down and making everyone into slaves. And we believe in freedom, and freedom starts at those basic building block levels. And
Yes.
so there's a kindred spirit, there's a kinship
Hmm.
because we look at life very similarly. We
Hmm.
have different ideas, we have different skills, but
Yes.
we look at life very similarly, which is to celebrate the achievement of our families.
Yes. Yes. See, I was discussing, Zionism with Dr. Annette Wilf, and what I
Hmm.
found
She's
interesting.
brilliant, isn't she? I love her. She's great.
Oh, I love her so much. She's
Yeah.
a wonderful person, really,
Hmm.
as human too.
Hmm.
So, and when I look, discuss, Zionism, she told, I asked her about Zionism because um I think that it is very important as ideology, like the building block of the nation.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's, uh, you know, I don't know, these people who like to make propaganda, probably, they like to make propaganda no matter what the facts are. But, the important part is that, you know, I believe that, Zionism is a building block of the nation. And
Hmm.
even though, Japan, the ideology of Japan is completely different, you know, I think that, it's not impossible for Japan or the Japanese, to understand that Zionism is, the basic, ideology that, of how the nation should be, for as a Jewish state or, I have to say, well, like the Zionists, I have to say, really. And,
Actually, it's interesting.
mhm,
As you know, Japan was a member because it was part of the Allies in World War One
mhm,
against the Central Powers.
mhm,
And in 1917,
mhm.
after England did the
Oh, yeah.
declaration that they
Yes.
thought the Jews should have a
Yes.
homeland
Hmm.
in Israel, Japan similarly
Hmm.
endorsed it. And then,
Yes.
of course, at the League of Nations and at San Remo, they were a part of the unanimous vote in favor.
Yes.
And similarly, Italy, France, the UK, and the United States, although not in the League of Nations, which is why they entered into a separate treaty
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, after the League of Nations unanimously approved Israel, adopting all the resolutions in a separate treaty with the UK.
So
But
they
it's
that
that generosity of spirit, that's, I think, part of it. It's a generosity of spirit,
mhm.
recognizing that this is important to us and we can understand why other people feel it's important to them to
Yeah,
have their country.
yeah, that's what I really feel. And
Hmm.
in 1940s, there was a researcher on Jewish people, who
Hmm.
wrote about this. But now it's gone. I don't know
Hmm.
why. I don't know why. It's just, it's terrible, but it's just so. I think that, at the same time, it's a crisis of Japan. You know, it's almost, I would say that, if they cannot understand Zionism, that means that they cannot understand what Japanese means at the same time.
And that's part of it. That's that communist influence
Mm,
because they are against anyone having their own separate nation and power base.
yeah,
They want everyone to be their slave.
exactly. And see, I do not believe that, the Jewish people and, Israel, like, a lot of people would discuss this way, like, I agree with the Jewish people, but not with Israel. But see, this kind of discussion does not make sense at all. But like
Hmm.
a lot of like, disappointingly, a lot of academists make this discussion, and that affects the students, the young generation. And what scares me is that, this, 60s violence in Japan is going to repeat again in the future. And, this means that, Japan would have another terrorist attack.
Hmm.
Meaning, well, Japan had domestic terrorists, which was Red Army, and they fled to
Hmm.
Lebanon. But,
Hmm.
I don't want this again, really.
You're so right. And that's what's happening in the US as well. It's very scary and it's not protected speech. It's
Yes.
fascinating. People don't study the First Amendment correctly because not everything is protected free speech. For
Mm,
example, you can't defame people
mm. Exactly.
and
Yeah.
and you can't make false statements
Mm-hmm.
and you can't have fighting words and you can't incite violence.
Mm-hmm.
So there are all kinds of things that are not protected speech. Somehow that gets lost. It's people want to say whatever they want, including to defame people
Mm-hmm.
and to basically spout what amounts to fighting words.
Mm.
So think about the ugly things that people say. Is Israel committing genocide?
No.
No. Okay. Are the college students who support Israel genocidal? No.
No.
So why is that permitted? That's defamation. And it's defamation of a whole people, which is wrong. So why that's considered protected, I don't know. Then there is the intimidation, the harassment, the destruction of property,
Mm-hmm.
not following the rules, which also violates a lot of laws. And then follow the money. It's amazing how much money is handed out to these people
Mm.
because think about it. How do they all have the same tents, the same t-shirts,
Mm-hmm.
the same scripts that they read on their phone? It's
Mm-hmm.
all coordinated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's paid speech, in effect, not free speech. And it's propaganda and it's terrorist
Mm.
oriented because it celebrates terrorism
Mm-hmm.
and it is also
Mm-hmm.
enabling
Mm.
of terrorism, and
Yes.
it also supports terrorism.
Yes.
So all those things are wrong under so many laws. And the worst part is it then dehumanizes people as a class so that they become targets because all of a sudden they're considered evil because of this libelous
Yeah.
talk. And so it's demeaning of people. So, how about discussing ideas? There's nothing wrong with discussing ideas. When I went to college, I had in the economy, in economics, uh, professors who were Marxists,
Mm-hmm.
and they would challenge us with Marxist ideas, and
Mm-hmm.
we were allowed to argue,
Mm-hmm.
and we argued. Because I certainly believe, I call it the free market with heart,
Mm-hmm.
because what we have is a free market system that generates enormous wealth. And
Exactly.
then we have social welfare programs to deal with people who are not doing so well.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, all of us,
Mm-hmm.
in Japan, in the US, a free market with heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the most successful thing in the history of the world because the truth is, there are more middle class people across the world
Yes.
than ever in the history of the world, all because of the free market system. Now, the Marxists cannot make that claim. That's all they can claim is they have slavery because they have, whether you call them serfs, whether you call them workers, whatever you call them, they're beholden to the state and they don't have
They're
free will.
all controlled.
They're
And
all
also at
slaves
the
by
same
another name.
time, those who hold the power,
Hmm.
they become dictators, in
Hmm.
Marxist system. And in terms of free market, I really like Milton Friedman.
Oh, yeah.
I really
Very, very smart man.
Yeah, he is, yeah, it was eye-opening when I read, his book when I was in the university. I found his book. I was like searching, like economics books, and I found about him one day, and I just decided to read him, and it was so fascinating.
Yeah.
It was so fascinating. Yeah, but free market economy is very important for us, really. And so, I mean, a lot of people think that, economy and, this welfare are two separate things. But at the same time, it's important for people to be a part of economy all the time, you know. And,
Hmm.
those who are not doing well, may have an opportunity. Like, or if they're given an opportunity to be a part of economy, that's the best part, of the free market system,
My
I really believe.
my
So,
mentor
mm,
in charity was a brilliant rabbi. He started off as the chaplain in an insane asylum. And
oh,
what he noticed is the patients were more on drugs and were unhappy
mm,
because they had no sense of accomplishment.
mm,
So what he did was think about the brilliance of this gentleman. He put a notice on the bulletin board. Anybody who wants to work a few hours, sign here. And within a few weeks, he had two busloads of people who came to a print shop he set up. He bought a 19th century printing press,
hmm.
and
Wow.
every piece of type had to be set, the old lead type.
Oh, wow, wow.
Every piece of paper put through the press had to be precisely cut. So it would be 30 people around the table cutting it to the exact proportions,
Uh-huh.
and then people setting the type, and then people turning the printing press. And it was
Wow.
completely manual.
Mm,
And he used to have lines of people want to come, and no one thought they were getting charity
mm,
because he paid everybody.
wow.
So what he said to me was, you see, his goal was to preserve self-respect.
Oh,
Because if a human being can have a sense of accomplishment and self-respect, that's more important. If you shower them with money sometimes,
Hmm.
that's all you're doing is destroying their self-respect. So he said to me, do always the minimum, not the maximum.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did something similar for developmentally disabled people. They crocheted and did doilies that were sold by not-for-profits for holiday occasions. And then he came up with a new concept of a co-op supermarket, but everyone had to work in the supermarket.
Hmm.
So they could come after their regular job and they could stock the shelves and orders and this and that. But everyone was a part of working the store, not just getting the benefits. And then he started something that I look back as one of the final things he did and what he told me about it. He started a catering hall
Hmm.
for people who couldn't afford to make weddings, where
Oh,
he rented them the hall and all of the dishes and utensils and the pots and pans. The family with their friends came to cook the whole thing. They had to be the
oh,
waiters, and he
oh,
leased them all the equipment.
oh.
So now think of this. He
Hmm.
says to me, he knew he was a success when they started to complain he was making too much money.
You
So
know,
no one thought they were getting charity. They thought
uh,
it was a business. And so his goal to preserve self-respect, because God created us,
mm,
every human is special.
mm,
Every human being is supposed to have free will.
mm,
Every human being should have opportunity.
mm.
And so he wanted to preserve that. Now, some people needed help, but he said if you give help and destroy self-respect, you're destroying the human being. The key is
Oh,
to
that's true.
preserve self-respect. What a genius.
See, I think that, that's important that, when you look at like Soviet Union, which destroyed the personality of, human
Hmm.
beings. And, the communist China, that destroyed humans, basically.
Yep.
So,
So we respect each human being,
mm.
every person. There are no two faces that are precisely alike. Every human being is different. They all have different skills and personalities, and it's the combination that makes this world work. And that recognition is very important. And any system that wants to destroy it is doomed to fail because
Yeah,
it's not how we were created.
that's very true. Yeah. Well, yeah, like I'm very, very, yeah, I very much agree with, what you say. And I, I did not know about all these, and I'm just so impressed at your story. But, yeah, but, so Jerusalem Day, by the way, uh, is from yesterday evening towards.
It was yesterday and the night before. It was
Yeah.
so it celebrates the reunification of Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because in Zechariah, one
Mm-hmm.
of the last prophets,
Mm-hmm.
he actually talks about the fact that Jerusalem will originally be together,
Mm-hmm.
but then it will be split, and the Jews will be exiled from a part of it.
Oh.
And then it will come together, never to be divided again. So I would submit to you, we're experiencing that prophecy. And there's an
Wow.
interesting story about this. And I can't tell you I have a precise source because I can't find a written source.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a beautiful story, and it was told to me
Yeah.
that Rabbi Herzog, who was the chief rabbi of Israel during the mandate of the UK,
Mm-hmm.
was in Jerusalem
Mm-hmm.
when the Jordanians attacked
Mm-hmm.
and took the old city
Mm-hmm.
and then pushed all the Jews out and kept it until 67,
Mm-hmm.
which is when it was reunified because Jordan, amazingly, Israel told Jordan, why are you fighting us?
Mm,
Relax. No, they had to fight. So they started to shoot artillery
mm,
onto Israel until Israel was forced
mm,
to defend itself. And the result was they got back Judea and Samaria, including Jerusalem. And the fighting for Jerusalem was not simple,
mm,
but they succeeded. And that reunification and liberation and reunification of Jerusalem is
mm,
what's celebrated on Jerusalem Day. So Rabbi Herzog was there, was like 1948,
mhm.
and the British wanted to evacuate him because he's the chief rabbi. I mean, he's an important person. And he looks around. This is the story now. Okay, so I can't tell you this is so. All I can tell you is it's beautiful. It may be true, it may not be true. It's still a beautiful story. And supposedly he looks around and he goes, "No, I'm in a good place here. It's fine. I'm in the good part." So it was almost like he recognized the prophecy of Zechariah, and he said to himself, he was in the part that's not going to get exiled like the other part, and so they didn't have to evacuate him. He was okay. And the miracle in 67 was it was reunified, just like Zechariah predicted, and hopefully it will remain undivided as the capital of Israel the way it's supposed to be.
Well, I really hope, that, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And at the same time, I hope that, more nations, join Abraham Accords.
Yep, God willing.
Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, I was surprised. I hope that, Azerbaijan and, some of the, Muslim nations in, like Kazakhstan and all these nations, join Abraham Accords, ultimately,
Yep.
in
And peace will emanate from Jerusalem.
yes. Yes, I mean, yeah, it's exactly like, I mean, it's a symbolic day, not just I believe not just for the Jewish people, you know, Jerusalem Day, and at the same time, I was thinking of your book. Because it's just right. We have to read it like because it's just right. It's not difficult to remember the title, and it's available on Amazon. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah, and it's about time, and I have to, I guess that your day is starting. So, but it was very, very, grateful that, I got to know a lot, I got to, you told me a lot of stories, and it was very impressive. And, I at the same time, pay the deepest condolences to the, the victims of the DC terror attack,
Hmm.
really.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I hope that, there's no further such thing. And at the same time, um, you know, as long as, Jerusalem stays as the capital of Israel, like, I believe that there is going to be peace. Not
Hmm.
just, we cannot just, talk about now, but in the future, we have to think of the future. Before the war, I was reading, actually Dr. Oren, Michael Oren's book
Yes.
about, like 100%, years, marking, Israel's marking 100 years. And I was impressed with it. And then October 7th happened. I don't know what to describe because it was just too horrific and terrible. But, I still believe that there is, 100 years, of Israel and then more. So,
Okay. Thank
okay, so I hope you have a nice day.
you too.
And
All the best.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.